The Celestial Ultimatum. The Grand Council chamber of the Vexian Alliance was deathly silent. Once, it had bustled with the representatives of 300 species, their voices a cacophony of diplomatic discourse. Now, barely 30 remained, their faces gaunt with desperation. High Chancellor Zevix, the last of the Marian race, stood at the center of the chamber. His crystalline exoskeleton, once a brilliant azure that captured and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns, had dulled to a lifeless gray. Around him, the final council members waited, hope draining from their eyes with each passing moment. The Null Swarm has breached the Andromeda defense line, Zevix announced, his translator converting his harmonic speech into words the others could understand. 12 more worlds have fallen silent in the past cycle. The evacuation ships, his voice faltered. None escaped. Admiral Kress, a hulking Taurian with leathery skin and 4 arms, each bearing the scars of countless battles, slammed his fist into the holographic display. Our finest warships couldn't even slow them down. They simply consume everything. Matter, energy, even the fabric of space itself. The display showed footage from the final moments of the Andromeda Line's command ship. Black, shapeless entities flowing through the hull like it wasn't there, leaving nothing but empty space behind. The recording ended abruptly, as all recordings of Null Swarm encounters did. "We have deployed every weapon in our arsenal," said technologist Illyra, her tentacles writhing in agitation. Antimatter bombs, quantum disruptors, even the forbidden star-killer devices, nothing affects them. Zevix's compound eyes reflected the grim faces surrounding him. At the current rate of expansion, the Null Swarm will consume our remaining territories within 15 cycles. The Vexian Alliance, after 10,000 years of civilization, faces extinction. In the silence that followed, an ancient Corvin scholar named Thresh hobbled forward, his avian features partially obscured by life support equipment. "There is one possibility we have not explored," he wheezed, his voice barely audible. All eyes turned to him. Thresh was the keeper of the Alliance's most ancient records, histories that predated even the founding of their civilization. "Speak, Keeper Thresh," Zevix urged. "The humans," Thresh said simply. The chamber erupted in murmurs, some of disbelief, others of contempt. "Myth," spat Kress. "Children's tales to frighten younglings into obedience." "No," Thresh insisted, his voice suddenly stronger. "Not myths. Before the Alliance, before the Great Migration, there existed records of a species called humans. They occupied a small sector near what we now call the Dead Zone." The Dead Zone. Illyra's bioluminescent patterns flashed with alarm. "Nothing survives there. The cosmic radiation alone mold." "Precisely," Thresh interrupted. "Yet historical records indicate that the humans not only survived there but thrived. They were different. While every other species in our records evolved through natural selection to avoid conflict, to specialize, the humans evolved to adapt to conflict itself." Zevix leaned forward. "What happened to them?" "According to the archives, they simply disappeared. Some believe they ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others thought they were wiped out by some cosmic catastrophe. But before they vanished, they left behind a communication protocol, a way to reach them, should the galaxy ever face an extinction-level threat." The council chamber fell silent once more. "Why have we never heard of this?" Kress demanded. "Because," Thresh said, "the protocol comes with a warning. Call upon us only in the darkest hour, when all other options have failed. For when we return, the galaxy will never be the same." Zevix straightened, his crystalline form catching the light. "Where is this protocol now?" Thresh produced a small, unremarkable cube from his robes. "I have kept it safe, as my predecessors did before me. For 5,000 years, it has never been activated." All eyes fixed on the cube, unassuming yet suddenly the focus of all their hopes. "If these humans existed," Zevix said slowly, "and if they could help us against the Null Swarm, What choice do we have? No one spoke. The extinction of their civilizations hung in the balance. Activated, Zivix commanded. Thresh's trembling claws pressed a complex sequence into the cube's surface. It hummed to life, projecting symbols none of them recognized into the air. Then, seemingly of its own accord, the cube rose and shot a beam of energy toward the ceiling. The energy disappeared, apparently transmitted to some unknown destination. For long moments, nothing happened. The council members exchanged glances, hope giving way to disappointment. Then, the entire chamber shook. The holographic displays flickered, went dark, then reactivated, showing a single message in a language none of them had seen before. Yet somehow, they all understood it perfectly. Mi is sag oricivid, ku ordinates ko nfi armid. Stand by, for cont. Could it be? Whispered Elira. Before anyone could respond, a new presence filled the room. Not a physical entity, but a projection unlike any they had seen before, a being that appeared solid yet ethereal, dressed in a simple gray uniform with no visible rank or insignia. Its face was oddly featureless by Alliance standards. No mandibles, no scales, no tentacles. Just two eyes, a nose, and a mouth set in a determined expression. I am Commander Vega of the Human Oversight Collective, the being said, its voice carrying an authority that silenced the chamber instantly. We have monitored your situation. The null swarm has been of interest to us for some time. Zivix stepped forward, stunned. You're real. You've been watching us. We have always watched, Vega replied. Since we withdrew from Galactic affairs, we have maintained observation posts throughout the cosmos. The null swarm emerged on our sensors 300 of your years ago. 300 years, Kress exclaimed. We only encountered them 2 years ago. The humans' expression didn't change. We have been tracking their progress, studying their patterns. They are not what you think they are. They're destroying everything. Elira cried. Whole worlds, entire species. No, Vega countered. They're consuming. There's a difference. And now, they've reached a critical mass that threatens this galaxy's stability. Can you help us? Zivix asked, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time, the human's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. That depends on what you mean by help. We can stop the null swarm, yes, but our intervention comes with complications. What complications? Thresh asked. When humans withdrew from galactic society, it wasn't by choice, Vega explained. We were asked to leave. Our presence was deemed disruptive. By whom? Zivix demanded. By the precursors to your alliance. They feared what we might become, perhaps rightly so. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever the past, Zivix said firmly, we face extinction now. We need your help. Vega nodded slowly. Very well. A delegation will arrive at these coordinates in 6 hours. Prepare your leaders. They will need to understand exactly what they're asking for. The projection flickered and disappeared, leaving the council in stunned silence. Did that just happen? Elira whispered. Thresh clutched his ancient cube, his eyes wide. They're coming back. The humans are coming back. Zivix turned to face his council, his crystalline form catching the light once more. Whatever happened in the past, whatever these complications might be, we have no choice. Prepare for their arrival. The fate of all our worlds now rests with a species that's been gone so long. They've become legend. As the council dispersed, Kress approached Zivix privately. Chancellor, if these humans are real, if they've been watching us all this time, why haven't they helped before now? Why wait until we're on the brink of extinction? Zivix had no answer. But as he gazed out at the stars through the chamber's viewing port, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to change forever. 6 hours later, as promised, they came. Not in ships, as the Vexians had expected, but simply there, appearing in the council chamber as if they had always been present. 3 humans, dressed in the same gray uniforms as the projection, stood calmly amidst the startled council members. The one in the center, taller than the others, with silver streaks in her dark hair, stepped forward. "I am Admiral Helena Vega, Human Oversight Collective. We are here to discuss your null swarm problem." And so began the most important diplomatic meeting in the history of the Vexian Alliance. The Watchers unveiled. The diplomatic chambers of the Vexian Alliance flagship had never felt so small. 3 humans stood before the gathered representatives of the remaining free worlds, their presence filling the room despite their modest physical stature. Admiral Helena Vega, flanked by 2 colleagues, she introduced simply as Specialists Chen and Okoro, surveyed the alien council with calm, analytical eyes. Behind her impassive expression, calculations and assessments were clearly being made. "Let me be direct," Vega began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber. "The null swarm is not a natural phenomenon. It is a tool, a weapon created by a species that existed long before any of your civilizations arose." Zivix's crystalline form stiffened. "Created? You mean something made this?" "Horror." "Yes," Vega confirmed. "An ancient race we call the Architects. They seeded the cosmos with various technologies, some beneficial, some destructive. The null swarm was designed as a reset button, a way to clear cosmic regions for new development." "But why now?" Elira asked, her tentacles curling in agitation. "Why has it activated after all this time?" Specialist Chen, a compact human with features that suggested both great age and vitality, stepped forward. "The null swarm responds to certain triggers. In this case, the trigger was the Vexian Alliance's experiments with quantum folding technology." A murmur spread through the council. Quantum folding had been their most promising new development, a way to travel vast distances instantly by folding space itself. "You've been watching us that closely," Kress growled. "We've been watching everything," Okoro replied, his deep voice resonating in the chamber. "It's what we do." Vega raised a hand, silencing her colleague. "When humanity was encouraged to withdraw from galactic affairs, we made a decision. If we couldn't be part of galactic society, we would become its silent guardians instead." "For 5,000 years?" Thresh asked, incredulous. "Time passes differently for us now," Vega said enigmatically. "But yes, we've maintained watch stations throughout the cosmos, monitoring threats like the null swarm." "If you knew about it, why didn't you warn us?" Zivix demanded. "We tried," Chen interjected. 3 times in your recorded history, we sent emissaries. Each time, they were treated as threats and driven away or worse." "Impossible," Thresh muttered. "Our records would show." "Your records were altered," Okoro stated flatly, "by those who feared our return." The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence. "Enough about the past," Vega said firmly. "We need to focus on the null swarm. You've tried to fight it conventionally, and failed. That's because it's not a conventional threat." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, a perfect representation of the null swarm, but with details the Vexian sensors had never been able to capture. Instead of amorphous black masses, they saw intricate structures, complex patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves endlessly. "The null swarm doesn't consume matter," Vega explained. "It converts it. Everything it touches is broken down and repurposed into more of itself. That's why your weapons were ineffective. You were essentially feeding it." "Then how do we stop it?" Zivix asked. "We don't stop it," Vega replied. "We redirect it." With another gesture, the hologram changed, showing a complex device unlike anything the Council had seen before. "This is a null attractor. It emits a signal that the swarm finds irresistible. We place it in a location where the swarm can do no harm, and it will follow." "Such as?" Kress asked suspiciously. There's a dead star at the edge of your galaxy, Chen explained. A perfect prison. The swarm will be drawn there and contained by the star's gravity well. That's it? Elira asked. That's your solution. Lure it away. It's more complicated than that, Okoro said. The attractor must be calibrated precisely. Too weak, and the swarm ignores it. Too strong, and it consumes the attractor before the trap is complete. And who will deliver this device? Zivix asked, though he already suspected the answer. We will, Vega said simply. Human vessels can approach the swarm safely. We've developed shielding technology specifically for this purpose. The council members exchanged glances. It seemed too easy, too convenient. What do you want in return? Cress asked bluntly. For the first time, Vega smiled, a small, knowing expression. Perceptive. Yes, there is a price. Not for saving you, that we would do regardless. The price is for what comes after. Explain, Zivix demanded. Humanity wishes to rejoin galactic society, Vega stated, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as equals. We've spent 5 millennia watching from the sidelines. We're ready to step back into the light. The council chamber erupted in voices, some in favor, others vehemently opposed. Silence, Zivix commanded, his crystalline form flashing brilliantly. When quiet returned, he addressed Vega directly. You said earlier that your intervention would bring complications. Is this what you meant? Partly, Vega acknowledged. Our return will change the balance of power in the galaxy. Some will welcome us. Others will fear us. There will be adjustments. And if we refuse? Cress asked. We'll still save you, Vega said without hesitation. But afterward, we'll withdraw again, continue our vigil from the shadows. And the next time a threat like the Null Swarm emerges, and there will be a next time, you'll face it alone. The implication hung heavy in the air. Give us a moment to confer, Zivix requested. The 3 humans nodded and withdrew to the far corner of the chamber, standing in perfect stillness as the council deliberated in hushed tones. We can't trust them, Cress insisted. They've been watching us for millennia. Who knows what else they've done? Does it matter? Elira countered. They can save us from the Null Swarm. Nothing else matters if we're all dead. Thresh, clutching his ancient cube, spoke softly. The old records speak of the humans as protectors. Fierce, yes. Unpredictable, certainly. But never malevolent. Chancellor, Cress turned to Zivix. If we allow them back into galactic society, everything will change. Everything has already changed, Zivix replied, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. The Alliance is in ruins. Our greatest achievements have failed us. Perhaps change is exactly what we need. He turned and approached the humans. Admiral Vega, we accept your offer. Both parts of it. Save us from the Null Swarm, and afterward, humanity will be welcomed back into galactic society. Vega nodded, satisfaction evident in her eyes. A wise decision, Chancellor. We'll begin immediately. How soon can your ships deploy the attractor? Zivix asked. The 3 humans exchanged glances, something like amusement in their expressions. Our ships are already in position, Vega informed him. They have been since we received your signal. Impossible, Cress interjected. Our long-range scanners would have detected. No, Chen said simply. They wouldn't. As if to emphasize the point, a holographic display activated, showing a view of space surrounding the Vexian flagship. At first, it seemed empty, just stars against the void. Then, as they watched, ships began to appear. Not 1 or 2, but dozens, then hundreds. They were unlike any vessels the Council had ever seen, sleek, angular constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible engines, no weapon ports, nothing that marked them as conventional spacecraft. They simply existed, silent and watchful. By the first ones, Elira whispered, How long have they been there? Always, Okoro replied. We are always there. Vega stepped forward. The operation begins now. Your remaining ships should withdraw to these coordinates. She transferred data directly to the Vexian systems. You'll be safe there while we handle the null swarm. You expect us to just retreat? Cress asked, bristling. Yes, Vega said firmly. This is not combat as you understand it. Your presence would only complicate matters. Before anyone could protest further, the humans' forms began to shimmer, becoming translucent. We'll contact you when it's done, Vega said, her voice already sounding distant. And then they were gone, leaving the council staring at empty space. Did we make the right choice? Elira asked quietly. Zivix gazed at the fleet of human ships now visible on their screens. We're about to find out. Over the next 24 hours, the remnants of the Vexian Alliance gathered at the coordinates provided by the humans. From this position, a seemingly arbitrary point in space, they had a direct view of the approaching null swarm and the human fleet moving to intercept it. The Vexians watched in silence as the human ships approached the leading edge of the swarm. In previous encounters, any contact with the black mass had resulted in immediate disintegration. Yet the human vessels passed through the outer tendrils unharmed, protected by shields that glowed with a soft, blue light. Incredible, Thresh murmured, watching the tactical displays. Their shielding technology must be centuries beyond ours. Look, Elira pointed. At the center of the human formation, something was happening. A device, presumably the null attractor, was being assembled in space, component parts brought together by smaller craft that darted between the larger vessels. It's enormous, Cress noted. The attractor, now fully assembled, was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move even as they watched. When the device activated, there was no flash, no dramatic surge of energy. Instead, a subtle ripple passed through space, barely visible on their sensors. But the effect on the null swarm was immediate and dramatic. The black mass, which had been advancing steadily toward the remaining Vexian worlds, paused. Then, like water finding a new channel, it began to flow in a different direction, toward the attractor. It's working, Zivix breathed. The human fleet began to move, escorting the attractor and the pursuing swarm away from inhabited space, toward the dead star that would serve as its prison. The journey would take time, even at the incredible speeds the human ships could achieve, but the immediate threat to the Alliance had been averted. 3 days later, as the last of the null swarm disappeared into the gravity well of the dead star, Admiral Vega returned to the Vexian flagship. This time, she came alone, appearing suddenly in the council chamber as before. But now, the council that greeted her was different, no longer desperate and fearful, but cautiously optimistic. It's done, Vega announced without preamble. The null swarm is contained. It will remain trapped in the star's gravity for at least 10,000 years, by which time it will have broken down into its component particles. You've saved us, Zivix said simply. The Alliance, all remaining species, owe you a debt we can never repay. Vega shook her head. No debt. This is what we do, what we've always done. And now, Cress asked, what happens with humanity's return? That, Vega said, is up to you. We've prepared a proposal for integration, a slow process, taking perhaps a century, allowing both sides to adjust gradually. A century, Elira exclaimed. That's reasonable, Thresh interrupted, given the circumstances. Vega nodded appreciatively at the old scholar. We don't wish to disrupt. Despite what you may fear, we have no desire to dominate or control. Humanity has evolved beyond such impulses. Have you? Cress asked skeptically. Mostly, Vega admitted with unexpected candor. We're still human, still flawed, but 5,000 years of watching the cosmos unfold has taught us patience, if nothing else. Zivix stepped forward. Admiral, there's something I must know. If the null swarm was such a threat, why did you wait until we called you? Why not intervene sooner, before so many worlds were lost? A shadow passed across Vega's face. The terms of our departure were explicit. Non-interference unless directly requested. We've bent those rules when we could, sent warnings when possible, but direct intervention. She shook her head. That required your invitation, even at the cost of billions of lives. Crest demanded. Yes, Vega said quietly. Even then, the galaxy's species made their choice 5 millennia ago. We respected it, until today. Silence fell over the chamber as the implications of her words sank in. But now, Vega continued, her tone lightening, we have been invited back, and we have much to offer. Medical technology that could extend your lifespans tenfold, energy sources that will never deplete, defenses against threats you haven't even discovered yet. And in return, Zivix asked. Perspective, Vega replied. Yours. All of yours. Humanity withdrew from the galaxy, but in doing so, we lost something precious. The view from inside. We became observers, not participants. We need to learn how to be part of something again, not just watchers from the shadows. For the first time, Zivix saw something truly recognizable in the human. Uncertainty. For all their advanced technology and power, the humans needed something only the Alliance could provide. I believe, Zivix said slowly, that we can help each other. As word spread throughout the remaining worlds of the Alliance that the null swarm had been defeated. And by whom? Reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the humans as saviors. Others feared what their return might mean. But as the first human diplomatic missions were established, as their technology began to heal worlds ravaged by the swarm, as their knowledge was shared freely with all who sought it, the fear gradually gave way to something else. Hope. The galaxy was changing. The humans had returned from legend, not as conquerors, but as guardians who had watched over them all along. And though the road ahead would not be easy, for the first time in generations, the species of the Vexian Alliance looked to the future with anticipation rather than dread. In the shadows between stars, ancient watchers finally stepped into the light.